go by. There is a light up in the sky. Betty and Barney get high.
Up the alien keep. Because he goes a bit flaccid, he's getting a bit old. As we all do. Okay. Hello and welcome back to Close Encounters TV, the weirdest show anywhere in the digital, analog, metaphysical world. Here we talk about UFOs, paranormal, cryptids, conspiracies. Tonight we're going to talk about ghosts and the paranormal, the afterlife. And I've got an amazing interview coming up with psychic and author Philip Kinsella, who's a psychic twin. How cool is that?
Love Philip.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
always got some really interesting stuff to talk about, hasn't he?
He has. He's got some quite spooky stories, but you know, meaningful. So, you know, all our viewers out there, what are your thoughts? Do you think ghosts exist? What are they? What are your thoughts, Guy?
Oh, I've had so many encounters with ghosts, like shared experiences. So like
Right.
multiple people have seen like the ghosts at times. Do you know what? I have no clue because they're all so different. But I think maybe there's an energy that's kind of like a trace of. I mean, we're so full of energy, aren't we, human beings? And I think that's one of the attractive things why aliens maybe come to visit us, etc. It's that wild energy that humans like possess, and you know, maybe that energy just burns itself into existence at some point. And
Yeah, maybe. It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, I've had some ghostly experiences. One when I was a kid, and it was this woman's face appeared on the wall, like a portal opened, and that was like, whoa, what is this? I thought maybe it was an angel or a ghost or maybe even an alien. It's very, very weird. It was definitely not of this world and profoundly affected me. And a lot of people have had, because you know what we do, we go a lot of places to speak to people in pubs, and they find out what you do, and everyone's got a weird ghost story, haven't they?
yeah,
You know, even remember the actor John Altman?
yeah,
He was telling about being this really haunted hotel in a village called Pluckley in Kent, I think it is. It's apparently the world's most haunted village, and they didn't know this at the time. And he stayed at this hotel, and he woke up and his bed was shaking. And he was alone; he wasn't with anyone. and yeah, there was this portal of light shining down on him. So again, we're making connections between paranormal, ghosts and UFOs. Are we dealing with the same energy? I wonder. But
yeah, I think so. Maybe it's just that ghosts have been kind of like historically an explanation for some of these things, whereas aliens and UFOs are kind of more recent, aren't they?
yeah, I guess being in a technological age where we have aircraft and other technology, this is what we see now. We see UFOs. Maybe in the past we would have seen fairies or demons, and keeps gone down again.
Oh, no.
Is he going to survive a whole series? No. We actually need a ghost in this one. We don't need. Keeps feeling a bit left out talking about ghosts. We're not talking about aliens.
We've got a skeleton. Although
Halloween reject. What's that?
yeah, so me and my friend
Yeah.
walking back from a party one night in the village in the dark, both saw a Victorian dress
Oh.
with no, you know, face, arms and legs, just the dress floating towards us.
Wow, that's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, and we both saw it, and we both absolutely pegged it. So
Wow, that's cool, isn't it? That sounds a bit like maybe that's stone tape. Is there any stone buildings nearby or anything?
yeah, maybe, yeah.
There's this theory out there called the stone tape theory, which I absolutely love. And this kind of relates to ghosts. Like there's a place called a city in England called York, and a lot of Roman soldiers there, and there's these cellars there are and people see, you know, these Roman soldiers walking, but up, like here, because the cellar goes down there, and it's really, really weird. But it's a theory that, you know, when you die, the energy goes somewhere, and sometimes this energy and these memories are stored in the fabric of the building and then replayed.
So that's interesting because I used to live outside Roman Road,
Right.
and every night I would hear
Right.
like the Roman soldiers walk by. So maybe that energy was in the road or
Sure.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it could well be, and you know, obviously you've got stone circles. We still don't know what goes on in stone circles. Maybe that was some sort of recording device, some sort. We don't know, but we just speculate. But you mentioned something earlier about when we die, we've got so much energy inside us. Don't forget Einstein theory of relativity. Energy cannot be made or destroyed. It goes somewhere. And scientists have now proven that when you die, there's a small outburst of energy upon death. Where does it go? It goes somewhere. It doesn't just disappear. So that is really interesting, and which leads me to think that goes to another dimension or an afterlife, because Philip talks about this in a bit, about, you know, he had a kind of near-death experience,
Oh, okay.
which I let him talk about.
Yeah.
But a lot of people who have these near-death experiences, you know, they go somewhere, and it is mad. I had an out-of-body experience once, which I can't explain to this day, and basically my physical body was in the bed, I was rising above it, I was in a new flat, and my kind of astral body went around this new flat and saw what was on top of the wardrobe, which I couldn't see normally. And I checked when I woke up in the morning, and exactly what I saw when I was floating up there. There's no way I could have known that unless I'd been floating up there, which is really, really weird.
That's interesting.
But I can't explain it. But you know, my astral body left my physical body. So I think the two are separate. And then we start talking about this, we'll get into the mind and consciousness not being beholden to the body. Consciousness is a separate thing.
Yeah. I mean, when I've had an out-of-body experience, it was linked to...
Guinness. Linked to Guinness. Another product placement.
I mean,
Yeah.
it could have been
Yeah, no, but
Guinness. But it was linked to like very strong like vibrational feelings, so vibrating at a different level.
Sure.
So maybe when you vibrate at a higher level, that means that you can leave the physical like world.
wow,
Maybe.
Where'd you go then? Is your soul recycled? Is Earth just a soul simulation? I'd like to know your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I don't like the simulation theory, but it's valid, isn't it?
Well, yeah, it could explain a lot of things, but it does make it a bit kind of depressing
Yeah.
if that's all life is. But there's something to reincarnation. I'll speak to Philip about this. Let's go and have a little look at Philip's interview now. Yeah. Okay, people watching the live stream, you will not see the interview. This is where we edit it in later. This is live TV. This is how it works. Thank you for watching. Thank you for all the hearts. And yeah, the show's called Close Encounters TV.
Keith fell down again.
Keith has fell down.
Oh, Keith.
Okay, Keith. Okay, sorry about that. We'll resurrect Keith later. Maybe he'll come back from the dead. But yeah, no. So that was an interesting interview with Philip Kinsella. So basically, the experience he had where, you know, his friend was dying of cancer, and he asked his friend, because he knew he was going to die, that, can you send me a sign that there's an afterlife? You know, can you send me a sign? He said, yeah, I will. I'll come, and then I'll beam myself up, because he was a big Star Trek fan. And so, yeah, it's amazing that Philip saw him in the conservatory briefly and saw his body walk across. They didn't communicate, but then his body just kind of disintegrated, and much like you do when the Star Trek beam you up. That's so weird.
That's amazing.
So that's the sign. And my favourite film of all time, The Ninth Configuration. Check it out. It's a late 70s, early 80s film written by William Peter Blatty, who wrote The Exorcist. It's a fabulous film, The Ninth Configuration, and that is about this guy who basically sends his friend a sign from beyond death, that there is an afterlife, that there is something else, and that gives him hope and carries on. So yeah, so I think there is some form of afterlife, but whether we get reincarnated, possibly.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people talk about like recently departed people, just giving them signs to tell them that they're okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had things from friends that have died, and there's an overwhelming feeling that they were trying to communicate that don't worry about me, I'm fine. And I'm sure like a lot of people out there have had similar.
Yeah, send us your stories. If anyone's got any experiences of recently departed loved ones, sending them signs, let us know. I mean, we need to research this more. I mean, for the record, I've got a science degree. I'm quite analytical. I shouldn't really believe in this, but because of my own experiences, there's more to life than material reality. That's one thing I'm sure. I don't know what it is, but there's more to life than flesh and blood. We have souls, animals have souls, and they go somewhere. Energy can't be destroyed. So that's my opinion on Close Encounters TV. Need a Guinness on. But yeah, it's one of those chats you have down the pub, and it's not quite a pub. This is a garage with deflated aliens. But it is late night chat down the pub with your mates, isn't it?
Yeah.
About what these things are.
I mean, I personally think that we're all part of one big connected energy thing.
Right. Okay.
And so we go down, like when we die, we go back up into the thing, go back down to Earth, and our experiences help the wider like being or like wider consciousness grow.
Right.
So it's always growing, learning, because we're learning ourselves.
But are we coming back into bodies on the planet?
Yeah. That's what I think.
Okay, because I asked Philip Kinsella this question. It's like, what happens if physical life on Earth is wiped out by some global cataclysm, like we talked about in the previous episode?
That's interesting.
Where do the souls go then? If there's no humans or animals for us to go into, what happens to that energy? Any answers, anyone? I don't know. The energy goes somewhere. It can't be destroyed. Interesting, eh?
Yeah.
How to get around that? What do you think, Sabrina? What's the answer? Okay, shrug. And what time are we up to?
12 minutes.
12 minutes! We've got more to talk about! So, football? Monkey tennis?
Oh, football. Wow, the season.
No, we're not talking about football. I want to just talk briefly about the links, because obviously we talk mostly about UFOs and extraterrestrial things, and I've always been interested in the links between ghosts, paranormal, and UFOs. So I think there's a connection somewhere. I'm still working out what it is. So what do you think?
I mean, I like often talk about my experience, like.
Yeah, well, tell us again, because viewers out there don't know it. Yeah.
I mean, I hope I'm not boring some of the people that have already. But as a child in Warminster, probably like 2 or 3 years old, I was like drawn out my bed, like, and was hovered down the stairs out of control.
Wow.
Into the living room where I saw a blue humanoid glowing being, and I was drawn to that person or that thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, the thing is, it could have been maybe in older like days you would have said that was a ghost. Maybe now to me it was an alien. But maybe that's just like the context of what I've grown up with. But yeah, I think there's a big crossover between what people experience and just being, because they understood them as ghosts, they could be aliens
I think
right now or...
Sure. Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, That goes back to the writings of John Keel, American ufologist, author, journalist. And he was looking into the weirdness of UFO sightings and alien encounters. And there was this otherworldly element to them that was paranormal. And he had it with the Mothman prophecies, where he was communicating with this being called Indra Colt. He was giving him messages, prophetic messages, but it was like dealing with a paranormal entity. So maybe there is a connection. I mean, from our own, we've just made a film called The Rendlesham UFO, the British Roswell. We did our investigation there. We did a CE5 expecting UFOs and close encounters of the fifth kind, but what we got instead was paranormal, wasn't it? It's the only way we can describe it.
Yeah, it was really odd.
Yeah, we all turned into Yvette Fielding going, ah! Something in the woods, don't go in the woods. Yes, we went in the woods. But there was this strange noise, paranormal noise that we couldn't locate, and there was orbs, and then we had the cryptid howling on the way home. So that was, we can't explain that. And, you know, we expected UFOs, bright lights, maybe ET, but we didn't get that at all.
No. But we got something stranger in some ways.
Yeah, we got evidence of something. And that goes back to what John Hanson, who's that CID detective, who's been to Rendlesham many times and had paranormal experiences. He's witnessed stones fall from the sky in Rendlesham Forest, and these land on the ground, and they're hot. They come from somewhere, and he sent them off to a laboratory, and they said it's like they've just been formed. There's no residual elements or dirt or anything like that on them. It's like they've just been made. How is that possible? What is that? Is that paranormal? Is that Fortean? Is that it's unexplained, I guess?
Yeah.
But, you know, I guess what we're on is some sort of quest to unify all these things, the paranormal, UFOs, cryptids. It's a one big theory.
The more like we dig into it, the more it starts to sort of all mesh together, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. So that's our plan. So if anyone can help out there, Close Encounters TV, we need your research and your findings. If we can find the meaning of it all, then maybe we can live all better lives and a better planet. Or maybe not, or maybe we need to live in fear of the unknown for our own survival.
I think the truth is probably like, I know because in King of UFOs, you had some like people kind of saying that leave these things alone, don't touch them.
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
dangerous.
Yeah.
But I always think, you know, maybe it doesn't matter how dangerous the truth is. The truth, and like you should try and understand it.
Yeah, well, we'll keep searching for the truth, but my worry is that people who go on this quest end up mad or dead.
When you're linked with the areas of the UFOs, it also encompasses parts of the supernatural, and we know that through cases of cryptids and people that seen UFOs or had some kind of abduction, and also life after death. And I had an experience back in 1999. We had a colleague, a friend, who was very sadly dying of cancer, and we all knew that he only had about 18 months to live. He was a swimmer, physically fit, good lad, and he was only 19 at the time when he contracted this disease. So as he was going through his illness, I approached him and I said to him, look, you know, his name was Gareth, and I said, you know, would you do me a favor? Because at that point I was involved in UFO and psychic research. And I said, would you be able to show yourself to me after you've died? And because I'd given him a redundant manuscript called The Eternal Cosmic Corridor to read while he was going through his illness, which explored this. He didn't say much about that when he came back. So he said, well, how do you expect me to do that, you know, in answer to my question? And I said, well, I don't know. I'm sure you'll find a way. And he said, I'll tell you what else, being down like they do on Star Trek, because he loves Star Trek. Well, anyway, he died in the summer of 1999. And then after his funeral, I went into an old bookstore that's owned by an author here in Bedford. and Mr. Richard Wildman, who wrote books on Bedfordshire, and he had a secondhand bookstore, and I was always in there frequenting the occult section. And when I was in there, this book fell on the floor, and it was called Reunions by Dr. Raymond Moody, and it was about how to communicate with the dead using mirrors and other objects of divination. So I picked up the book and I took it home and I read it. And in there was an experiment. He called it the mirror experiment. And it was where you get a mirror and you lay it in an angle so that you're sitting in a chair. And when you're looking into the mirror, you can see the reflection of the ceiling. It has to be semi-darkened room. And what you do is you stare into this mirror and think about the person you want to come through. Well, I did the experiment, and the only thing that I did get through was the face of Thomas the Tank Engine, you know, the children's character. I don't know why that was there. So I put it away and thought it failed. And in the winter of 1999, I came home from work, I sat in the kitchen, and I was looking through our conservatory glass doors and led out to the garden. And our garden, it has a wall and a gate, a very thick gate that's locked. And the entrance to the garage is also locked. So I'm sitting in the kitchen looking through the glass conservatory doors, the windows, the glass to it, just, you know, my mind's somewhere else. And all of a sudden I see this, what I think is a young man, and it is. And I thought, you know, my goodness, someone's intruded in the property. And he walked where the outside was to our back garden, where the entrance to the garage is. And he turned to face me, and I stood up, and it was Gareth, and he was wearing his cap, white t-shirt, blue jeans. There was no communication, but he was visually there. And then all of a sudden, he started to sparkle like all these little lights, and then disappeared. And I pulled back the door to the conservatory and then opened up the door, and it was gone. So that was the one and only real time that I have. Well, there's been another occasion, but not with him, and it was very brief. But that was the one time that I had an experience with a deceased person, not so much as a ghost. And I had the feeling that he'd been kind of like giving me the message back to say, hey, I can do that. And of course, the beaming up like Star Trek at the end with the stars was quite spectacular. That actually happened. There was no communication. And when I read further into Dr. Raymond Moody's book, Reunions, when he tried the experiment and he wanted, I think it was his mum, after the experiment, he was laying on a couch, and then his mother-in-law that he didn't get on with came in to the room. And when you have these episodes, when they happen to you, it's almost like it's perfectly normal. It's like you and I are just having this chat now. And yet when you relate it to someone else, they're like, it's a big wow factor associated with it. So it's kind of like a very strange, combination of these facts. And this is why I started to get involved with the psychic phenomena, with clairvoyance, because of that. And there was a build up to that. And that all started in the very beginning, the same month, the same year as Princess Diana, when my maternal grandmother had passed over in Somerset. She was in a Somerset hospital dying of cancer. And we got to see her. And a week later, I was at home and in my bed. And I woke up in the early hours of the morning and started to cry. And I was upset. I knew it had something to do with my grandma. And then all of a sudden, her voice came in my head. And I can still remember what she said. She said, "Why are you crying? Why are you crying?" And then she had there was this feeling of peace. And then she showed an image of me and my brother as babies in her lap. And there's a photograph of that. And then 10 minutes later, the phone rang and she'd passed. And that was the start of it. So I do believe that in elements of the paranormal, as we call it, whether it be ghosts or loved ones or cryptids or UFOs, I think we're dealing with some kind of interdimensional construct. And I also believe that there are connections to be made when, for instance, you have a UFO encounter, which happened to me and my twin brother. And then, of course, this led on into the psychic department and exploring that area. And then, of course, taking some pictures of what we consider to be cryptids. And so it's kind of unusual. I think that there is this kind of hitchhiker effect does take place, because those in Skinwalker Ranch did report this. And when you think about it, it's not because you're making anything fit. It's stating that, has something changed within you? Has the energy around you changed? Are you sending out a different signal that's not the same as other, ordinary folk around you that don't have these experiences? So that is an interesting point, I think, when you're dealing with areas of the paranormal. And UFO research leads you into conscious research, leads you into interdimensional research. And so it's not just kind of like compacted into one box, and this is what this is, and that's what that is. I think there is a combination of these
That's
subjects.
interesting, because what's your opinion on what happens? Because I believe we've all got souls. Animals have souls. What happens when we die? Where are they going? To another dimension or to an afterlife? What's your opinion?
Well, that is interesting, because when I was very young and we lived in South Africa, I nearly drowned, and I had an experience then. I was all but about 6 years of age, maybe a little bit older. And I still remember the experience. There was no light, there was no tunnel. And I remembered when I was under the water, I seemed to be in the air, and there was a bald-headed man that dived in, and I had no connection to that person under there. Didn't. And then, of course, I found myself in this beautiful land, this world. And so I believe that, the experience is very unique and different. I think it's perhaps interdimensional. There was a point where I felt like I was at home. It could have been another planet. People tell me heaven or the afterlife. It could have been another planet. I was in this place filled with rocks, and I felt this instant connection with them. It was a deep feeling of a recall, a knowing, a remembering that's starting to surface. And I think what happens is that in this life, because we're recording on a very limited flow of conscious awareness, our brain is translating information that I believe is recorded and then stored within the secondary body, the astral body or the etheric body. And when death occurs, there's a severance between that limited flow of conscious awareness, and then whoosh, it's like this, wow, it's like it's all there.
This is how it is.
Yeah, and so I believe that it's possible that people call it heaven, but I don't believe that we all gravitate to the same place. I believe that, like UFO encounters and alien experiences, it's unique to the individual. So it seems to operate on an individual basis.
I mean, do you think souls come back as well?
That is a very interesting question. Do we reincarnate? Well, I've got to joke and say, why on earth would I come back here? When I go back, I'm going to get a refund. Because, I mean, it's possible that we're going through an experience where we're recording our experiences, rather like making a film. And then when we pass over, we're adding to the process of creation. Like building upon an experience that gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Maybe we're all part of a united consciousness that is exploring itself through us, that we're all part of that, but we're also individual at the same time. Wow. It's a little bit of a contradiction to think that way. But I've often thought about that. And the process of reincarnation is interesting. I mean, do they get in a reincarnation bank, or how is it done? Yeah. I've explored this with other researchers, and one particular person said to me that on the other side, he literally took himself to the beach, sat down, meditated, and then came down here. And in another case that I dealt with years ago, and one person, as they were dying, they then found themselves immediately coming into a new body without any intermediary point within the other side. So we don't know. We have no idea. But there again, if we only have one incarnation, what's the point?
Do you think this is a kind of a cosmic thing as opposed to just planet Earth? Because, for instance, what would happen if human life was wiped? It could happen fairly soon. What would happen if human life was wiped out? Well, these souls still exist. Where would they go?
Yeah, well, we see this as a very human experience. And when you're linked with near-death experience research and conscious research, afterlife research, life between life research, we consider ourselves to be human, but I don't feel that is the case. I believe that the spirit, or rather people call it the soul, is the energy that permeates this biological earth matrix. So when we pass over, we will remember and see our loved ones the way that we had and record them, because they probably got the imprint on that, the astral imprint or the etheric imprint of how they were when they're on this side of life, but that doesn't mean to say that that's what they ultimately represent when they pass over. If you look at the Egyptians, for instance, they were very interested and very connected with the afterlife. And we know that their pyramids of Cheops was built to, as we understand theoretically from other research, to send their spirit to the Orion star system. They wanted to get off. So you hear about these other stories of interplanetary connections. So it's a good point in question, but I don't believe that we are ultimately human. I think we're a spirit going through a human experience, so to speak.
Wow. Okay, because you mentioned like Earth, the Earth matrix. So could life on Earth be? It's basically like a soul simulation of some.
An interesting point. There are two different, ideas about that. Some people consider it to be a trap. I think that the Earth, within its primordial creation, was not meant to be as it is today.
Sure.
My idea is that it's been hijacked. And I say that because if you go into the ancient antediluvian texts, the Gnostic texts, they're telling a different story about the fall, the descent of the spirit, and of course the creation, as we know, the Anunnaki, the archons, and of course then the total creation of the human, which is endowed with the spirit, and the archons were not. It's a story that goes back a long way, and that kind of makes sense if there is another force here that's holding us, locking us into this reality as a source of energy, because they don't have what we have. And you get other people on the other side of the coin saying, well, this is an Earth which is a school, a pretty harsh one, I think. When people say to me, they say, well, you plan your journey before you come down here. I don't doubt that, but the argument with that, Mark, is that, well, Auschwitz, dare we mention it, third world countries, war-torn countries, poor lives. I mean, who would want to come into that experience?
Well, this is it. Yeah, I heard that. Someone told me the other day that you choose your own parents, and I found that hard to take because I didn't have very good parents.
No.
So
Sorry.
why would you do that? Why would you choose evil?
I think, a really good point. I mean, how does the process occur? But I think that within the field of potentiality, people say to me because I do readings for people all the time, I'm black and white grounded. I just need a yes or no to confirm. They wanted the future. Well, here it is and it's gone. Here it is and it's gone. There's never a future because that point has hit the particle and then becomes a wave of memory. But I do believe that there is a field of potentiality that we may send out. But as regards to that question of planning the journey, I think perhaps we have an outline, but then we have free will. And then, of course, we are a species that are unpredictable. So, people can make choices, and those choices can change something for someone else in a positive or negative light. So it's a very, very complex area. I don't believe that things are random, because people experience deja vu and, they have synchronicities. I've had them. I'm sure you've had them.
Yeah.
And that's kind of interesting when we theorize as to what that is, whether or not we have alternative timelines, alternative lives, that we're living multiple lives in multiple dimensions of reality, and that there can be a convergence between the two at some point within those lives, within this life and their life, or the other part of who and what you are. So it's an interesting question, and this is something we've been looking at also in our research with regards to what is it that we are, why are we here? Where have we come from? Where are we going? These are the questions that most people seek. But most people, they are fine with life. They live, and then they say, well, I'm dead. That's it. And it's like, for me, that's a horror story. But how can you then relate that to UFO activity or psychic phenomena?
That's true for most people, but then a lot of those people will have experiences on that journey.
Yes.
The blinkers on, but something will upset them and think, well, actually, this happened and I can't explain it, and it's not part of the plan.
No.
It might change their thinking. So I guess it's getting people to open up.
Yes, that's right. And I think from the system that we serve hasn't helped, because whenever there's, some kind of opening or revelation about UFOs or life after death, for instance, or any number of those areas that sit within what we call the supernatural, they'll denounce it. And when we go back to the past, it's almost as if we're not allowed to look into the past. The past has been changed. And even memory, we don't, other than psychic residue or some kind of recall through regression or even naturally, tells us that we're much more than just biological automatons with a sell-by date. So I do believe that there is purpose and design, but what that is, we don't know. Ultimately. And I think, it's fair to say the human has always felt to be subjugated, throughout the ages. We've always had to suffer. If you think about it, and I'm sorry, but I believe it. They say about slavery, but we're still a modern day slave labor force from the system that we serve.
Sure.
So I think that's very interesting to speculate about the bigger question. And the thing is, when you've been touched by the singularity in any manner, whether it be UFOs, psychic phenomena, whatever, it changes you and you start to consider the bigger question. And, and I don't believe in the primordial version of evolution and that they all just happened with a big bang. You need something to create the bang in the first place. It's just like people just go along and say, "Oh, I believe that," and that's what happened.
Yeah, that's
and we'll just
doesn't
take
make
the
any sense.
No, we just take the basic version, which most people believe.
Really, really good points. It's a hard question to answer, but obviously life in the universe was created, but who who's the creator?
We have no idea. I mean, but in the primordial sense, something was responsible. I don't believe that within our human genesis that, when we look at it, it's although we have problems as humans, the whole concept is perfect with its symmetry. I mean, if you think about the Earth, the gravitational forces holding the planets in alignment, and the gravitational forces then going out, and then space, and where does that end? And most people shut down, like, no, I can't see it. I can't accept that, but it's there. When people say they don't believe it, well, you just have to look out in space and there it is in front of you. If there is a border, where is the border? If it wraps round in a circle or a donut, where's the outside of it? So I think that perhaps there was some kind of intelligence, cosmic force that had seen to the ultimate creation. People call it God. People have different words for it, names for it, because they're not able to relate to that, because it's a power beyond our mental capacity to understand that. But something's happened. And the other thing that I find really annoying, Mark, is people say, "Oh no, we're the only intelligent species in the universe." Well, how on earth can they answer that question when they don't even know where the edge of space is? And that's even considering the interdimensional hypothesis. It's crazy. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's always profound talking with you. Just tell us briefly about your new book and any works you've got coming up.
Yeah, sure. My new book that's come out, I've co-authored with a dear friend of mine, Chris John Mays from London. He's a psychic medium artist and poet and all the rest of it. And it's called The Eternal Avatar. And that's published in America, but can be obtained in England. And I'm working on a new book, which deals with the oppressive force that's here and the lies, disinformation that's been given to the public, not just about the UFOs or life after death, but also creation. So it's kind of like a hefty project, but I want to, make clear to people that there are three questions that we're asking, and yet every time we ask them, you're pushed down. It's like, how dare you? Life after death, UFOs, and creation. And I believe that those three, you can make connections to them, and that will lead us back to the past. And this is why the system doesn't want us to know that, because it will awaken to the fact that we've been lied to, and that is the truth of God. All of us have been lied to by a system that says 1 minute it's there, then the next minute it's not.
Sure.
Yeah.
That was one of my questions I forgot to ask when you were talking about life after death and what happens to our souls and coming back. Do you think and that life on Earth being a bit of a kind of a prison, for want of a better word? do you think there are those that are in power? I don't want to get too conspiracy, but do you think those are in power that know this? I think there's secret knowledge.
Yes, I do. And I believe this is interesting, if I may just explain here, Mark. So if there is a force that's still here, which I believe, that is not part of us as being humans, that it's interesting, isn't it, that as humans, our consciousness has always been subjugated. We have a brain that's a transmitter for mind consciousness. We create from the mind. And yet our minds have been, programmed, conscious dissidents. And I believe that those at the top of the symbolic pyramid of power, the nameless, faceless bureaucrats, those in real governance that we haven't seen, I believe that they're utilizing every part of what we call the mind to bring in these alternative dimensions of reality. Yeah. And I have addressed this in Avatar and in my other projects as well too. So yes, I believe that they're dumbing us down. And they've got the real magic. They know how to utilize that, but they're condemning us. So there's obviously a reason why we're in holding, why we're kind of like impending. I'm sorry, I could use that word. The human species has always been impending. We've never been allowed to advance and to develop beautifully, creatively, intellectually, because the system only wants it one way and one way only. So, I think it's very, very interesting to consider that point, and I believe that. I think this force has been here for a very, very long time and utilizes certain tactics that we will say, oh my goodness, look, it's the aliens, they're coming, and they probably have access to mental powers. They're able to draw these alternative beings from these lower or perhaps higher dimensions forward into our realm. So yes, I do believe that.
It is interesting. Up the road from us, I live in Hertfordshire. There's this ghost of a highway woman called the Wicked Lady, Catherine Ferrers, and she used to rob people, the highway woman, very successful. And she killed lots of people, but her ghost is still around this area in Wheat Hampstead, and you can see her riding a horse and stuff. Yeah? Yeah. But it's not like, when people see it, it's like a recording. So it's not like she's there interacting with you. This goes back to the stone tape theory. So I think some ghosts are recordings, maybe in some sort of stone or fabric, that play back. But then hauntings and poltergeist activity are different things. Feeding off energy, usually of teenage girls, usually. Yeah.
Is that because that energy is so, like,
maybe, yeah,
kind of untamed, and especially, as a adolescent, you're kind of like your emotions are probably like at their most intense.
Sure.
Maybe.
Yeah. So
I just remembered a ghost story.
Okay, tell us a ghost story.
So it's an odd one. So my cousin died quite young, about 5 or 6 in a car crash, which is really tragic. And I remember playing with him, and he had the best cowboy outfit, and I inherited it.
Right.
And I used to love this cowboy outfit. Right. And then one time round about Christmas, I remember seeing him in my room, just laughing, wearing that outfit as a ghost. But at the time I didn't really think anything of it, and then sometimes when you look back on these things, you kind of go, oh, that was odd.
Ooh, that is odd, isn't it?
But yeah.
So yeah, there's another theory by Arthur C. Clarke. Arthur C. Clarke was the writer of 2001: Space Odyssey, inventor of the communication satellite, but he also had a TV program in the UK which had a profound influence on me and why I'm on this quest, because he ignited my curiosity and scientific brain to investigate these things. And his theory on ghosts and other phenomena that we see is that, the eye basically is a lens, and we get the images coming into the lens, and the brain then interprets what it is. But it says sometimes maybe the brain has the image and is sending out to the lens. So what we're seeing is what the brain's sending out. So it's actually our memories, our information in the brain, in terms of ghosts, maybe even UFOs. I'm not saying that's right. It's just a theory that not many people know of, which is interesting. So yeah, it was incredible. Arthur C. Clarke, he had an open mind about this unexplained phenomena, and there were some great poltergeist cases in the TV show worth checking out. You can probably see it free on YouTube. That can't be explained. Just mad, absolutely mad. So there's definitely something out there. things that go bump in the night.
I think we're looking, aren't we, to do some filming at a haunted house. Just waiting for.
Sure. Well, we're waiting to go to this training college where they teach basically all these paranormal people how to investigate these stuff. So that'd be quite cool.
Yeah, that's going to be really interesting.
Oh yeah. And we've got about our game show, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're doing our game show, Haunted Hotel. Can you survive the night in Haunted Hotel? Okay, what's the prize? Yeah, we don't know.
Yeah, we haven't worked out the prize yet.
Ectoplasm. Something.
Ectoplasm, like pudding or something.
Something like that.
Yes.
What's Guinness? There's always Guinness. What time are we up to?
22 minutes.
22 minutes. Crikey.
Funny how the last one.
Yeah, we can talk more about UFOs than we can ghosts.
Yeah.
That's Close Encounters TV.
Maybe we need like some inspiration from the live streamers.
Yeah, do you want to have a look, see if there's any questions?
Yeah.
UFO Shiv says something. I can't read it from here.
I have to put my glasses on.
Shiv, we're going to do another UFO program in a bit about the Anunnaki, which we know nothing about, apart from what idiots tell me. So, getting some good comments, are we?
Recording it.
Yeah, still record it, it's fine.
Jay King says he slept with a UFO that abducted him.
Okay, but that was uncomfortable.
Oh, no, I'm not.
Let's try and contact some ghosts now. Guy, come and sit down. We're going to try and conduct an experiment. We're going to try and invite spirits in. Are you okay with this, Sabrina? Mm-hmm. Okay. Are there any? I've got this. I say ghost meter. It's not a ghost meter, is it? What's it called again? This is called something technical. ECG. Gets me have heart attacks. It's a pheromone. Not a pheromone. No. What's it called? Electromagnetic thing. This detects electromagnetic energy, which you get when ghosts come around. So we invite any friendly spirits here with us now on this live TV show, live stream. Is there anyone here? Can you make yourself known? Can you give us a bump on the garage door? We are broadcasting live from a garage in Hertfordshire, trying to raise the dead. Is there anyone there? Are we wasting our time with this useless TV show? Oh, we're getting some hearts on the streaming. Getting nothing on here, though. Things right. We did this at Rendlesham Forest, and it was going crazy everywhere, wasn't it?
Yeah.
You'll see on the film. This was picking up all sorts of weird spikes at Rendlesham Forest. We found loads of weirdness there. Here, Hertfordshire. Nothing in the garage. It's not even picking up the Apple Mac. There's nothing going on. No. Guinness detector. So, okay, we'll probably get spooked all night now.
Yeah.
But we'll probably live stream some tarot cards later. We're going to do tarot cards?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll do that. We'll do a tarot card stream later, which would be cool. That's always interesting. And we'll ask about this alien craft coming to Earth, which will destroy us. Or not.
On the 29th of October.
On the 29th of October, which we keep saying. But thank you all for watching Close Encounters TV. The truth is out there, and it's weirder than you think. Good night.
Bye.
Bye. Cut!
There is a light up in the sky. We sit and watch it go by.